Hello, welcome to AF Cast. I am here with my two co-hosts Bryce A and Bryce M, and we are talking about Tom Clancy's The Division 2. So to kind of start us off about The Division 2, its developers were Massive Entertainment, Red Storm, and there were 6 Ubisoft companies involved in the creation of this. The engine to make the game was Snowdrop, and the publisher of the actual game itself was Ubisoft, while the composer was Ola Strand. The platforms that Division 2 is available on is the PlayStation 4, Xbox One, and PC. And about the actual game itself, it is an open world of DC. It's actually a 1-to-1 scale, which is pretty interesting. And it's really cool to see us, because we all went to DC, and so it was cool to see like stuff that we visited before, like the Air and Space Museum, or also like we saw the White House. You can see the White House, you can see the Washington Monument, you can see the reflecting pool, everything, and it's really amazing and it's really well done. And it is an action adventure game. That's what the main genre is. I don't know what all the subgenres are. It's probably yeah, there's probably a lot. So, but yeah. So the whole story is kind of taking back DC from all these factions that have taken over. And this game is actually placed after the Division 1, obviously, but it could have been placed at the same time as the Division 1 or before the Division 1. But this is after the disease has been eradicated, at least from DC. And there are still pockets here and there. Obviously, the disease hasn't been totally eradicated. But one thing that actually helped was a chemical that was released in the game called DC-62. That was meant to counteract the green poison, which was the disease. But enemies in the game have actually figured out a way to take DC-62, mix it with other chemicals and whatnot, and actually weaponize it. And you'll see that when they're using it to reinforce themselves, it basically gives them more health, and then medics will also use it to heal their allies. So, yeah. So also throughout the game, you will be able to build up your settlements and the White House. The White House is actually your base of operations, which is pretty cool. And then you'll find 3 other settlements around the area, which basically act as a base of operation, kind of for that area of the map. And in these different areas, you'll have shops. You'll be able to recruit members in the game, which I'll talk about in a second. And then there are certain areas which don't really have any use whatsoever. It's just once you complete side missions, some side missions add an area to the actual settlement. So like in one of the settlements, once you complete a mission, you'll have like a battery storage for where you'll have a bunch of batteries for comm services. So it doesn't actually help you, but it's just a cool little thing that they've added in that kind of shows you that you're progressing with your settlements and actually kind of building it up for DC. So there are also projects that you can do in the game, and these are just like random projects that will appear after you complete side missions or find new settlements or whatnot, where it's basically just completing some kind of like, I guess, objective to do, along with like gathering supplies, anything like that. I mean, I don't really find it to be that big of a deal, but you do get rewards for completing these projects.
The rewards are usually just sum of XP that isn't too much, but it's like,
Yeah,
it still gives you incentive to actually do these different things.
a lot of them you'll actually complete just by playing the game, so you don't really have to worry about like hardcore going for them until you get to like the end game. But they are just another thing for you to do inside of the game that makes it a little bit more interesting. So, like I mentioned earlier, you can actually recruit people to your team, and they'll like move over to the White House. And they'll give you certain like abilities or something like that. So like the first one that you'll be able to get is somebody who will help you with crafting. So then you'll be able to craft materials. And then there's also clans. One of them will help you do clans. One of them is Dark Zone Ops. One of them is like a firing range. But there's all sorts of them that give you different things. Like no. The very first one is right when you get to the White House. It gives you skills. It gives you the ability to use skills in the game. But yeah, so they'll give you different opportunities and stuff to use to help you progress throughout the game, and actually shows the BOO also transforming along with these other settlements. So, yeah. One problem I do have with the story, though, is that this is also a problem I had with the first division, but it's very hard, like, for the game to kind of catch my attention to the story. Like, I've found myself kind of playing the game like brainlessly almost, and I haven't really like focused on the story because there's nothing to really grab your attention and pull you towards the story. I don't know if it's the same for you two at all, but
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, for the amount that I've played, like Malcolm has played more than either of us have, but for the amount that I have played, I've noticed that as well, where it's not as even the Division One though wasn't super gripping, but it
yeah,
was still more so than the Division Two has been so far.
yeah. All right, so there are also multiple mission types throughout the game. There's main missions, which there are actually two main missions. One which is kind of like the main story, which gives you like skill points throughout the game. And then there's other main missions which are just like really important parts, but not necessarily like part of the main story, if you know what I mean. Which will give you shade tech, which allows you to get like perks or upgrade your skills, which we'll also get into later. And then there are also side missions. They're just like activities to help the BOO, your settlements around the area, or even just to help you upgrade to the next level and gain more loots. That way you can do more missions throughout in the future. Because every mission isn't going to be able, you're not going to be able to go like mission, 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 mission. You're going to have to do mission. You're going to have to do some leveling up throughout the map. Which I find to actually be a really great process. It might sound boring, but when you're playing it, it's actually a really amazing process that they have in the game. Uh, but yeah. And then there are also control points which you can find around the map. And these control points are essentially areas that you'll have to take over. And when you take them over, you're able to like call for help, which then you'll have civilian AIs helping you take over this control point. And first you'll attack it, and it'll have a leader that comes out. And once you kill the leader and everybody else there, it'll almost be yours. But after you do that, reinforcements will start coming from the streets, which will also have a leader. And once you defeat all of them, the control point is finally considered yours. Now, you do have it does like decrease the amount of enemies that are kind of just strolling about in that area around the control point. Uh, but you also do have to refill its resources, or else it is easier for it to conquer uh, from the enemies and whatnot. And then after you conquer it, you actually get a access to a supply room in the back, which gives you some pretty good loot. Um, and yeah, there are also unknown activities which you can find around the world. Some of these include like supply raids, so like you can find care packages that will come down, and you'll be able to just get the supplies and stuff while there's enemies coming after you, whatnot. And then there's also like propaganda beacons. There's like public executions, hostage rescue, all sorts of things.
And these unknown activities are a limited time thing. Like you'll see a question mark on the map, and you have I don't know the time for it, but probably like 30 minutes or something along those lines to go there and do it before it disappears.
Yeah, and you don't know what they are. That's why it's called an unknown activity until you get there. Um, and they don't really give you like a ton of XP, but it's something that you can do for like commendations, projects, or even just to gain supplies for your local control points. So yeah, there are also bounties which you can like acquire from random friendlies, or sometimes like when you're giving an officer supplies for a control point, sometimes they'll give you a bounty as well. And these bounties are just people that you can go after that give you special loot. There's nothing really too special about it. But the game thing that sucks though is that the game will automatically direct you to a bounty as soon as one comes up, just out of nowhere. You don't have to like press a button to accept it or something like that, or you can't unaccept it or something. It's just as soon as it becomes available, it automatically directs you to it, which kind of pisses me off because that's kind of how it would work in a Division 1 as well, where it would either automatically direct you to it even if you don't want it, or um or it'll just like or it won't allow you to accept it when you're trying to. I don't know, it's a weird issue. But there are also clan bounties which you can do just to have your clan like gain XP, which we'll also talk about later. There's a lot of stuff that interacts, so there's gonna be a lot of talking about that later. So sorry about that, but this is a large thing. So, but another thing is there are dark zones, which there are 3 of them instead of there just being one massive one. There is like an east one, a northwest one, and then a south one. And essentially, they're just 3 different dark zones. I don't know if there's anything special about each one. I think they're all 3 of them are just like different levels of dark zones. And the dark zone is basically exactly the same as Division 1, where it is PvEVP, which is player versus everyone versus player,
It's environment, not everyone.
or environment rather. So it's basically player versus everyone. um, and then you also gather contaminated materials, extract it via chopper, and then you can cut the rope if you want to go rogue. Then there'll be manhunts, etc., etc., etc. It's exactly the same as Division 1, so you don't have to worry about learning anything new. Except for you do have to do recon missions at the beginning of every single one after you get your person that will show you the way of the dark zone. And you'll have to do recon missions to help you locate safe houses, exits, and extraction points. And another quick note about missions in general is that if you change level mid-mission, so like if you go from like level 10 to level 11, the mission will also change levels between so all of a sudden all of the level 10 enemies will become level 11. And yeah, so that's just how it works. So I will say beware of that if you're cutting it close and you don't have like the correct stuff to actually take on level 11 characters, as they do grow stronger. So yeah. And then there's also the end game, which starts once you reach level 30. It doesn't take that long. It is estimated at a 20-hour campaign. A lot of people are completing it in like 12 hours if you know what you're doing. But it is estimated at a 20-hour campaign on average. And essentially, the end game involves a new faction that comes in called the Black Tusks, which become your main enemy and kind of I don't know if they like force out all the factions or if they just like significantly reduce the amount of the other factions there are.
Yeah, the presence of the other factions within the game.
Yeah. But apparently they are these like super highly advanced enemies that will take over the entire map, and you'll be tasked in ridding them from DC. And actually, one thing that's interesting is that they'll prevent you from fast traveling to settlements during world events. And I don't know if that's until you like take back control over certain things or whatnot. But yeah.
And is it just fast traveling to settlements or fast traveling anywhere?
I'm pretty sure all I read was that it was fast traveling to settlements, but it might be fast traveling in general.
Okay.
Because settlements could just be a
Broad
term. So, but yeah. Also, note on world events, we haven't had one yet, so we're not entirely sure what they are. But there's a lot of speculation of it basically just being exactly as the first division, where you'll just get a set amount of like achievements that you can complete or commendations or whatever, and they'll give you different rewards along with you building up a special currency, which allows you to buy special packs that give you good stuff, essentially. But we don't have any information on world events so far, like what they're going to be and what else. So another thing in end games is that there are specialists, and essentially it's just this like special class where each specialization gives you like general modifiers. This is like headshot damage, stability, whatever. Then there's weapon modifiers, which will give you like new weapons, different like grenade types, or even just like general weapon modifications. And then you'll actually also get skill modifiers, which is like sometimes can be a special skill, like mod that you can have on a skill, or not a special skill mod, but a special skill variation that you can have. Like one of them, you can have a artillery turret, so it's like a mortar basically that you can put down. And then each one of these specialists actually gets a special weapon and also some other miscellaneous things. Like I said, like they can get grenades or new weapons and whatnot, along with miscellaneous modifiers, which I'm not like really like I guess educated on all of them. So and there's a crap ton of them. So I'm
Yeah.
not going to go through all of them, especially since a lot of them are just like 25% extra headshot damage or something like that. So and you need to know that you'll be able to see it for yourself because they are all organized inside of a skill tree for each one, and you'll be able to upgrade that skill tree as you go. And at the moment, there are only 3 specialists, but there are a lot of speculations, and I'm pretty sure it's actually been confirmed that they are actually working on 3 more, which we don't have any other information about those 3, but we do have information about these 3.
So as he said that each specialist has their own signature weapon. And for the first specialist, they are the survivalist, and their signature weapon is an explosive tipped crossbow, which, as the name entails, it's a crossbow where wherever you shoot it, there's a giant explosion.
Yeah.
And then there's the demolitionist, whose signature weapon is a multi-shot grenade launcher, where it's a grenade launcher. Everything goes boom boom, as name's kind of fitting. And then you have the sharpshooter, which I know that this is one of Malcolm's favorite, where he has a TAC 50 rifle, which is a 50 caliber sniper rifle, where it does a lot of damage to people if you shoot them with it.
And it has insane range as well, so you can be sitting really far back and hit people really well with it. And just like there are certain weapons like marksman rifles, assault rifles, sniper rifles, where you have to pick up certain ammo for each of them, there is also special ammo for signature weapons. So you actually will run out of ammo for these things, so you don't want to just constantly be using this stuff, or else you will run out of ammo very quickly, and then it will be hard for you to gain back a good enough portion of it to actually use it correctly. Another part of the end game, just like the Division 1, entails a lot of exotic items and gear sets. And so essentially exotic items are just special weapons in the game, or even gear pieces that allow you to have like special abilities on them, and essentially make you really powerful. And then there are gear sets where once you collect a certain number of a certain like specific set, you will actually gain, also same thing with as the exotics, you'll gain abilities with it. Another side note to gear sets is that in the end game, gear will actually start to look more run down, kind of showing it's trying to show the transition from like newly deployed like soldier in the map, which is like from you up to level 30, to you being a survivor in this post-apocalyptic world in DC, which is supposed to be the end game. So as you get better and better gear, it will start to look more and more run down, but still be really, really good. And it's supposed to just kind of show how long you've been in the game almost, which I found was a really cool idea that they added into the game. And then there are also strongholds, which isn't necessarily just the end game, except for one of them, I believe. But essentially, the strongholds, there are 3 of them located around the map, and each one of these are controlled by an enemy faction. And as you take them down, you will be facing against wave and wave of enemies. But what happens is once you hit the end game, it'll be taken back over by the Black Tusks, and then you'll have to do it again in order to take over the stronghold. And I don't know if they'll keep retaking it, and then you'll have to keep doing it, because I think there might be something like that. Because I haven't done any strongholds yet, but that's what it sounded like to me when I was doing my research. But yeah, you can earn like special loot from strongholds, and it's really good loot.
And strongholds seem to be a halfway point between resistance and incursions from the Division 1.
Yeah.
Where you have the different set waves of enemies, but there's also a sort of story to it that you have to complete.
I'm not sure if there is a story. I think it's just like there's a lot of enemies here. Kill them.
Well, it's kind of the
So
story of like it's how you dismantle the factions.
yeah, I guess. But I definitely say I haven't thought of that actually. Is that they're a lot like resistance from just the West Side peers in the Division One. And another cool thing is that every time that you beat a stronghold, you'll like unlock a new world tier, and world tiers are supposed to act as milestones in the end game. And world tiers, I'm pretty sure, work the exact same way in the Division Two as they did in the Division One. Except for I think they might be locked in instead of you being able to switch between them. But I'm not entirely sure about that. Uh, and then there are also 8-man raids that are in the game. We actually haven't had one released yet, but they have already said that there's going to be one called Operation Dark Hours, which is going to be the first thing that's released in year 1 of the Division 2. And these are actually the ones I was thinking were really similar to incursions. And actually, Ubisoft themselves even said that they're basically just a 8-man version of an incursion. So they're a lot they're a lot harder to do. But they're similar to incursion. So so yeah.
And as he said, the Operation Dark Hours comes out as probably the first DLC.
Yeah.
And all of the year 1 DLCs are 100% free to everyone. It's not like most other games where you need to get a year 1 season pass or anything like that. They're all 100% free for everyone.
Yeah. And then one last cool thing that's in the end game is that in the Division 1 you can find in each like precinct, I guess is precinct the right word to use? District, region, I don't know. Is that there was a boss that you could defeat inside of the region, and then they would be like reset every like 12 hours or so. Or I don't know. It was like 6 hours.
Yeah, I think it was more like 6 hours.
But in this one, in DC, there are 52 world bosses that you get to find and attack, which means that no matter where you go in the streets, you're probably going to find one of these guys during any like 1 hour play session. You're probably going to find a few of them, if not at least like one or two. So, and these guys are tough. So, good luck.
Emphasis on the name, bosses.
Yeah. And then a little side note is that you can also like there's some stuff that switches over when you're making a new profile. Because you can have a total of like something like 9 profiles or something like that on one account. And you'll have your stash and your clan like transfer over, along with a couple other things. I just can't really name them off the top of my mind. But they do switch over between profiles. So you can't join multiple clans on the same account. You will only be able to join one at a time. Which kind of sucks, but another thing that's nice is that when you start the new game, you're already working towards clan achievements before you even get the person who helps you out with the clans. So,
and also with the stash, you can do what a lot of people did on the first division, where if you want to make multiple profiles, you can use your really high level one to give stuff to your new profile, so that way it's not like super far behind.
But if you also give a level 26 weapon to a level 2 character, they're not able to use it until they are level 26. So don't try to cheat the system like that. All right?
I see you out there.
It's kind of weird because we're not even in a video, so that'd be even creepier.
Exactly.
But yeah, so that was kind of like the story aspect of the game. So now time to get into the gameplay. So there is still JTF. Sort of. At this point, a lot of the JTF, like the actual like policemen and whatnot, kind of dead. So
kind of dead,
or somewhere else or whatnot. And so now it's being made like it's consisting mostly of civilians that have kind of survived the disease. And luckily, these guys aren't as annoying as the JTF from the first division, which is really nice. And there will actually be, like, if you find them around the world while you're walking around, there will actually be signs that appear above their heads that tells you what they're doing. So they could be, like, guarding, they could be roaming. They'll say if they're getting supplies for a checkpoint that's nearby. So, yes, they actually can resupply themselves, which is kind of cool. But yeah, and then luckily now Here's a few of the examples of why they're better than the JTF in the Division 1. They don't steal your cover, and they're overall smarter AI, which is, I mean, kind of obvious since Division 1 has been out for 3 years now, so they've had time to develop the AI a bit more. So they are smarter. They don't steal your cover as soon as you move out of it, like the ones in Division 1 did. They are a lot smoother than the previous division. And then they'll actually do damage now as well. They can kill an enemy themselves. That is like I've seen them kill veterans before. Honestly, they're probably not going to kill elites by themselves, but they can't. I've seen them kill veterans by themselves. It does take a few of them, but at least they actually do damage now, which is helpful. But one thing that is annoying is that they will run straight into enemies. They will have no regard for taking cover. So even though they don't steal your cover, now they basically just don't use cover. So it's kind of a positive negative thing that they've introduced into this one. But then they'll keep strafing. Like, even if they're not running full head on into danger, they'll strafe while they're shooting, and then they'll end up strafing into danger anyway. And the thing that's annoying about this is that if you're doing a hostage rescue, which is one of the unknown activities that we mentioned earlier, the hostages will pick up like pistols, and then they'll run straight into the enemies and get themselves killed, and you'll lose it because they'll run straight into the enemies, and so you'll have to like try to snipe someone when they're like the other side of you. When in reality they should just be running, in my opinion, but you know. So it is kind of frustrating in that sense, but at least they're smarter now. But yeah, a little bit about the enemies in this game is that the enemies actually also have signs, and they'll have the same ones like roaming or guarding or getting supplies. But they also have a couple extra due to them being, enemies, like attacking civilians, or like holding hostage or something like that. And one thing that is really nice that was requested a lot after the Division 1, especially when they heard that they're making Division 2, was that enemies are now less of bullet sponges, but there are more of them now. So they do still have the same damage output and overall health, but now each enemy doesn't have an unrealistic amount of armor that you won't be able to, kill as easily.
It's a lot more favoring single player now as well, because before, when there was, say, 4 people who you have to peek your head for a long time to try to kill one, now there's more people, but you don't have to be exposed for as long to kill individual ones, so it gives you more lenience.
But also, like, enemies in the Division 1 would sometimes push around you, and then you wouldn't be able to kill them in time because you'll keep running out of ammo trying to kill them. Whereas a Division 1, if you can hit every shot on a headshot with an AR, you can take out like a veteran enemy that's trying to push around you. And so it's a lot nicer now because you won't feel as trapped because enemies don't take as much damage, even though there are still a lot more of them. So they will overwhelm you now, but before they would also overwhelm you just in the sense of armor rather than numbers. There are also 4 factions like there were in the Division 1, except for these 4 are obviously different. We have the Hyenas and the True Sons, which you'll see both of them right off the bat at the beginning. There's Outcasts, which take you a little bit longer to actually like find them and start going against them. And then you also have the Black Tusk, which I mentioned only appears in the end game, but is way more advanced than all 3 of these factions, and kind of push them all out of the game. So one thing that is still annoying about enemies in this game is that they still move in super unorthodox way. And I don't just mean that it's annoying how they're programmed to move around you, because you can tell when they're doing it on purpose rather than it seems almost like a glitch in the coding. I don't want to say glitch in the coding, but just like miscoding almost. Because they'll say like trying to flank, and then they'll hide like on cover that's like basically the same, like I don't know how to explain it, like
part of the same
thing.
Part
of the same cover or something like that, trying to flank you or trying to go around you. Whereas there are other times where you'll start shooting them and they'll get freaked out, so then they'll try to take cover from you, but the cover they try to get from you is like behind you. and they'll run right past you, and as you're shooting at them, they won't even like budge, and they'll just keep running. And I don't understand if that's supposed to be part of it, but it definitely does not seem like it. It was the same thing in the Division 1. Doesn't make sense at all because all it does is get the enemies killed, and I feel like there's really no point in doing that because it doesn't help at all. Because then they'll also like there are some times where they'll do that, except for instead of running, they're strafing while shooting at you, trying to suppress you and trying to get behind you. So you can tell when it's on purpose versus when it's just like weird and unorthodox. So I don't know. I don't know if it's actually meant to. There's actually a video I've been meaning to watch that has like a professional person who works on AI actually talk about the Division's AI. And I want to watch it. So I would like answers, but I don't know them yet. And now medics can actually revive dead teammates just like you can. But it takes them about the same amount of time that it would for you. And medics are, really easy to kill now that they don't have as much armor. So they will still heal teammates, but now they can revive them as well. But they don't get downed. Enemies will fully die, but they'll have to, revive the full dead length like you would your teammates. And then also another thing that's really cool is that received debuffs in the game have been made way more effective towards the actual player. So now if you like run into a smoke screen or something like that, you'll honestly get really disoriented. And the Division 1, you could still move around really easily, even though it said you were disoriented. And it was just like a little bit like missteps kind of thing. But now it's like your entire controls keep flipping around on you. And it's like your screen kind of like waves, and then there is also like the flash has changed on, or like the laser has changed on the snipers now, where it makes you feel like actually dizzy. And so they're way more effective now, and I personally think it's better. And one thing that both of us have seen, experienced, and have gotten annoyed with is that enemies can start shooting and hitting you. So not just like shooting at you, but they'll actually be doing damage to you before they even spawn in sometimes, or even before they peek over cover. So like if you're holding an angle against like maybe the last guy, like on the enemy of the enemy side or whatever, and they start to peek, sometimes they'll start shooting you, and then they'll peek, and then you can start shooting them, and it's really annoying because they can get a good amount of damage in before they even do that. So, and it's not even like they're holding their arm above the cover and like spraying and praying above the cover. They're literally shooting you before anything even appears above the cover, which is really. So that's enough about the enemies. So now we're gonna get on to the equipment in the game. So they are the same rarities as the first division. So you have like common, uncommon, rare, etc. Then you also have the same armor types, which is like mask, knee pads, chest plate, backpack, holster, and gloves. Yeah. And then you have 8 skills this time, with each of them having 3 variants. So instead of there being a base type and then you having to unlock modifications for it, now there are just like different variants of each skill. So you'll choose to get one of the variants when you first buy the skill, and then you can use Shade Tech in order to buy the other variants, but you will still have to use a skill power, is what it's called, in order to get a different skill type itself. And then there are also perks in the game which act the same way as the perks did in the previous division, except for the selection is actually different, where instead of selecting certain perks that you unlock over time, you have all the perks, but you will have to unlock them separately with Shade Tech, but all of them are always equipped at all times. You won't have to choose. You won't have to choose them at all, so yeah.
However, there are like 4 perks that you have to wait till level 30 to use, but
yeah, there's I don't know exactly how many there are, but the last tier of some of them, or even like the first tier of some of them, you'll have to be in the end game in order to actually get the perks. I don't know what their strategy was behind that because some of them don't seem like I don't understand what the reasoning is behind it, but it's there. There must be a reason. I'm cool with it. And then they've also changed kind of the way the modifications work. So you can still mod your weapons. You can still mod your skills, but it's kind of in a different way now. So the way you mod your skills now is instead of it being a variant, like I mentioned earlier, now to mod your skills would be the same as you getting a skill modification for your armor in the in the first division. And you'll actually be able to directly put it onto your skill in order to give it, actually abilities. But you will need a certain amount of skill power in order for it to actually be able to be used on that skill. And then you do still have armor modifications, but you only get them once you get about like halfway through the story. And they're really small modifications. They're just general modifications. So they don't really contribute to anything except for your like general character. So they're not all that helpful, but yeah. And one other thing is that the weapon mods now, instead of it just giving you a bunch of stat boosts on the weapon, now it takes some stats away while it gives you others, so it still balances out the weapon. So you will have to you will have to pay attention to that.
And it gives you more of a choice in what kind of things you want to increase and what you're willing to give up for those increases.
Yeah, like one of the things I have is like a 12 times scope, which gives you like extra headshot damage, but it reduces your reload time. And so it's constantly evening itself out every modification. Also, once you reach a certain level, so like for weapons, once you reach blue, so which is rare, you will actually have a special ability that goes along with it. So this can be like armor penetration, damage to elites, headshot damage, and it's just there's small increases, but they are still helpful. And then every rarity you go up, it adds one extra, like, I guess I don't know how to say it, like I guess modification, but it's not a mod on it. Buff, yeah, that's it. On it that allows you to essentially make the gun even better. But yeah. And then overall, the inventory is really smooth in the game. I don't know how to explain why it's smoother, but it just is. I don't know if you have any idea of why it is smoother.
It feels more like in the Division 1 it felt very slow. Like you'd have to wait between pressing the button to move around or whatever.
Yeah.
Whereas Division 2 feels a lot more like
quicker paced.
A lot of like speedrunning game menus where you can very quickly and easily get to your desired thing, and you can get across the entire menu in less than a second, whereas First Division, it would take you
forever.
2 or 3 seconds to get across to your inventory.
Yeah, it always felt like forever, especially if you had just gone on like an hour expedition to gather a bunch of supplies, and then you come back and then you have to go through all of it. It takes so long because everything just takes forever. And also one thing with the speedrunning thing, you cannot change during combat. So even though you can go really fast through your inventory, you are not able to change any of your loadout stuff during combat. So don't try and do that. But yeah. And then now there are gear brands, which are slightly different than gear sets, but basically the same thing. Where once you get this like the 3 of a kind of like armor, so they'd be like the same name, but like holster, gloves, and mask or something like that, but they all have like the same name.
It's not even the same name. It's like they can have completely different names.
It's the same brand, is what it is.
The brand is more of a subgenre that's listed beneath the game or beneath the name of the apparel.
Yeah. And then as you combine them, and it only goes up to 3 at first until you get to gear sets, it'll give you certain buffs as you go.
And the buffs obviously aren't as big as the gear sets are because gear sets are more geared towards endgame. They're one of the rarest things, whereas gear brands are available from
common all the way up to...
I don't think it's common. I think it's uncommon and forward.
Oh, okay. So like uncommon to high end.
But they're still available very early on in the game.
Yeah. And then one thing that I noticed just the other day, and it kind of annoys me now that I've noticed it, but if you were to like holster both of your primary weapons, so like at the time I had an AR and a sniper, and I had pulled out the pistol, and I realized that instead of there being like an AR on one side of your backpack and then a sniper on the right side of your backpack, they just overlap on the right side of your backpack for some reason. I don't know why that is, because in the first division, what it was is the weapon that you switched from to the pistol would be on the right side of your backpack. So that way, when you switched back from the pistol, you knew which weapon was going to be pulled out. But now you don't because both of them are on the same side of the backpack. It's kind of annoying. It's a smaller thing, but I also don't understand why it's doing that. So it's a minor complaint, but it's still fairly annoying. So now onto the environment aspect of gameplay. um, One quick thing that I found really cool was that you'll actually find some areas that are completely dust covered because people haven't been there in a while and whatnot. But it'll actually leave footprints, almost like the snow did in the first division. And so that was just a cool thing. But it does disappear over time, so it doesn't like stick, which kind of downgrades it. But it's still a really interesting thing that they put into the game. And then they also have dynamic weather in the game, so they have like fog, rain. It can be sunny, it can be cloudy out, and it's super dynamic weather, and it's really cool because like in the mornings it'll have like fog covered areas, and it definitely changes how you play, like how you fight your enemies, because some of your enemies will like light up, with like will have certain things that make them light up. You can see them like in the pitch black night, because you don't have like any night vision or anything like that, so it's super dark gameplay sometimes, which kind of sucks for recording it, but I mean that's part of the game. So yeah. And then there are also kind of the same thing as the first division. There are bags, there are boxes and containers, etc., that are all around the world, with different loot in it. So it can be like weapons, gear, apparel, and then there's even shade tech caches that you can find, and are actually located once you go to the safe house in a district. And there are actually special containers as well that you can find around the world, mainly in missions that contain special ammo. And these different special ammo types are high velocity, which just basically do more damage and armor piercing. And then there's incendiary bullets, which will obviously set your enemies on fire. There are explosive ones, which will be ammo types that just deal more damage overall,
It also provides bleeding.
and also area of effect.
Yeah.
Yeah, but bleeding will make it so that way they slowly are losing health, obviously because they're bleeding. Uh, and then there's also shock ammo, which will shock your enemies and keep them in place for a little bit in order for you to do a little bit of extra damage. But you only get 30 shots every time you open one of these containers. And it doesn't like put it directly into your mag. It's just the first 30 shots that you shoot out of whatever weapon you're holding when you open the box, become whatever ammo type that was. So it's not like when you reload you'll see the number change. It's when you're actually firing the bullets that you'll see the number change. So it's almost like a barrel modification rather than a bullet modification, if you know what I mean, because like it's almost like the barrel changes I don't know. It's something weird. But you can actually hit these special ammo caches to blow them up, and it'll cause bullets to fire out of them, kind of like weak points on heavy LMG enemies, and it will actually kill enemies. I've killed people like that before. I've actually set off a weak point doing that before. So it is actually fairly useful if you can find. I don't know. I haven't done enough testing with it, or I haven't found enough like times where I've done it to find out like if you're to blow up an incendiary cache, if it would like light the people on fire that get hit by the bullets, or same thing with like shock. Because I'm pretty sure the only ones I've hit is explosive ones, so it might even just be the explosive caches that do that. But just a side note, if you want to try and do that. And then there are actually care packages, which we saw in the demo of the game, that will get stuck in trees. And if you shoot the package, then it'll open up and a weapon or gear or something like that will fall out of the care package, and you can pick it up. And so it's not like too good of loot, but I mean, it's still loot. So
No loot is bad loot.
exactly, except for the bad loot. Um, and and navigation is a lot better in this than it was in the first division. And by navigation, I mean the GPS arrow that you'll see when going to objectives. There have been a couple mishaps where it tried to lead me straight through a wall. Or like there was one time where there was a street that was split and all it had was it like right over the fenced area that was on the split, so we didn't know whether to go left or right, and we ended up, of course, choosing the wrong side. But yeah, so the navigation is mostly just a lot better now. So
until you get to missions, we've had a lot of issues where in missions we don't know where we're going at all.
oh yeah, the like it's so I don't even know how to explain it. It's just like it's not as obvious as it was in the first division. It was actually better in the first division during missions when it would have a little dot show up in like right in front of you and it'll direct you to where you need to go. But now they just have a dot on where you need to go, so you're like kind of searching around for this tiny yellow like diamond.
And sometimes it doesn't even show up.
Yeah, sometimes it hasn't even shown up and we've just had to find our way. Some of those is because it's search areas, so it makes sense. But there have been some times where it's not search area, and yeah, it's weird. But overall, the game looks absolutely beautiful. This is set during the springtime instead of the wintertime. So there's all this greenery, and it's really bright and colorful. Obviously, unless it's like raining or fog. But but yeah, and then the soundtrack in the game is absolutely amazing. Uh, so props to the composer that I mentioned earlier. I don't know if she did the first division, but she definitely did a good job on this one. So some movement and action in the game is the rolling is a lot smoother now than it was in the first division. I don't exactly know what it is. It's probably they just like fixed a little bit of it, but it's a lot. It's just a lot smoother feeling when you're actually playing. And you can actually kind of dive off of things when you're rolling. You don't hit like an invisible barrier when you're like going down something. So you can kind of like roll off of a ledge if you wanted to. Whereas in the Division 1, you just hit a barrier if you try to do that.
Well, if it's
So-
too high of a ledge, you'll still.
Oh
hit
yeah,
it.
if
it
it's
would
too
damage
high,
you.
if it would damage you, you would hit an invisible barrier. But yeah. And then mantling is a lot smoother now. Overall, it's just faster. And the actual animation itself isn't as clunky. Like before, it used to have like this weird like climbing animation when you're going over a like little piece of something, but now you actually do like you put one hand on the object and like fling your feet over top of it, and so it's like really fast and really smooth looking, and it looks actually correct to what it would be in real life. And that goes the same thing for like double tall objects where you have to actually like grab onto it and pull yourself up. And it just all looks a lot smoother now. And then gunplay in the game is about as smooth, I would say, as it was in the first division. And the first division had pretty smooth gameplay, or gunplay rather, and gameplay, honestly. But one problem that's happening right now, which is kind of fixed now, but it's still kind of acting up every once in a while, is that the skills are super glitched. And so like the problems that we were having is that they would disappear and then it would give you a 15-second cooldown until you could use it again. Or like sometimes it would get like stuck on your hand and you can't throw them. And or else it's like sometimes they don't even act how they're supposed to. Like sometimes I've activated something and it's kind of just sat there, just staring into nothingness and not doing what it's supposed to do, which is kind of frustrating. But a lot of them are actually directional skills. So you will have to, like for the sniper turret, you will have to direct where it's going to shoot and when it's going to shoot. For the attack drone, you have to tell it what target to attack, that type of thing.
So it's not as much like the first division where you can just press the skill button and let
Yeah.
it go. You actually have to some input on what goes on with it.
Yeah. And one thing is that when you're walking like near something, your character will get like redirected around it. And so it's like a very rare and small movement, but it's really annoying when it happens, especially during combat.
Because yeah, I've had it where I go to walk up to something and I sit like right on the corner of it, just so it would like block my bottom half, or I'm about to get behind cover, but I'm doing something else first. And all of a sudden, my character just kind of moves to the left and walks around it, and it's just very annoying how you kind of lose control over your character then.
And then there's another thing that is very common in third-person shooters are perception frames. And if you don't know what perception frames are, is like if you have a windowsill with like the window knocked out, and you could be aiming through the window, but you could be angled at the point where your gun is sticking through the window, but your camera, like your crosshairs, are on the windowsill that's like behind you. Because it's third person, so you can do that. But then when you start shooting, because you can see someone, it'll hit the windowsill even though the windowsill is behind the gun. So it doesn't happen too often, but it happens enough in like every third person shooter where it gets fairly annoying. Or there even be things where it'll just be small perception issues in third person gameplay. That is pretty frustrating, especially in shooter games where you actually have to be accurate. So, yeah. So then there are also clans, like we've mentioned several times now, where you will be able to complete weekly challenges that earn you like clan XP, and then you can get clan rewards, and actually level up your clan. So does leveling up your clan like give you special like XP stuff or something like that?
All that leveling up your clan does is give you the different clan rewards and stuff. It doesn't do anything to your character outside of it.
Okay. And then in order to actually activate these challenges, you will have to have at least 4 members in the clan because these challenges are huge. Like, and if there's one where it's just defeat this amount of this faction, and the number is at least like 3,000.
5,250.
Okay, never mind. I was way off. It's at least 5,250. And I don't think it'd go higher or lower. I think that's just the base of what it is.
But then there are other challenges like kill 250 rogue agents in the dark zone.
Yeah.
So insane challenges that are hard for a small group of people to do.
Or even just this really outlandish like circumstances in a mission that you have to do, that type of thing. But yeah, so the clan XP upgrades just give you like different perks in the clan, not to your actual character. And then there's also this thing called conflict where you actually get to fight other clans. So there's a skirmish, which is literally just a 4v4 with another clan. And then there's also domination, which you actually have to capture locations before the enemy team does, or enemy clan does. And yeah, so pretty cool. But one thing I will have to mention is that the word profanity warnings are way overdone. Like, our clan is called Toxic Clan, and so when we played Division 2, we found out about the clans, and then we went to make a clan, we couldn't call it toxic for some, like, that's somehow considered profanity in a shooter video game. But, like I couldn't name one of my loadouts, because you can have loadouts in this game. I couldn't name it assault. Even though one of the items in the actual thing is called an assault rifle. I don't know. But there's so many of those examples that I have just from trying to type different like loadouts, clan things, just different things in the game, trying to name stuff. So that way it's easier. But like so much of it is just crossed out as profanity. And it's like toxic and assault is not profanity. You can use it as profanity. You can use lamp as profanity if you want to. But, like, you can't just make a word profanity warning on every single word that has any toxicity to it. I get it now. I understand why it's profanity now.
Reminds me of the whole Tumblr
Yeah,
thing.
it's basically the whole Tumblr thing, except for in Division 2 now. yeah. So, anyway, for a summary of what we just talked about, because there is a hell of a lot of stuff. So the story is fun and interesting, but it's not attention grabbing. So you will only really find out if it's fun and interesting if you like really try and pay attention. Because overall, it's just the gameplay sucks you in. It's not necessarily the story that sucks you in. Which I would argue is good but bad at the same time because it should be the story that sucks you in, but also the gameplay should have a big contributing factor to it. But right now, it's basically just the gameplay. It was the same in Division 1, but at least Division 1 gave you a little bit more attention grabbing with fuel tanks flying out of the sky. You know, yeah, there's all sorts of stuff. But yeah, and then another thing is that Ubisoft even said this before Division 2 is even close to being released, but it is an endgame mostly, or is mostly endgame. So a lot of this stuff is supposed to take place in the end game. It's supposed to be primarily end game, yada yada yada. And now the inventory is a lot smoother. Skills are effed up at the moment. They should be fixed. The clans were really well made, except for the whole profanity word warning stuff. But the whole clan system is really fun to do, especially Dark Zone, where as you level up in the Dark Zone, you'll be able to like unlock tiers in that as well, and just all sorts of stuff like that. Now there are still a lot of problems in the second division, as there were in the first division, that they should have fixed. So I didn't say that earlier, but that is kind of just my summary, is that there are still a lot of things that people complained about, and it was a good number of people that complained about it too. It wasn't just me. Some of the stuff was just me. But
a lot of stuff.
But there's a lot of issues in the first division that they really should have addressed in the second division, especially when they had, like, I know they were really focused on making the game good and stuff like that, but one part of making the game good is fixing issues from your previous game, so that way you can make your sequel just that much better. But yeah, so I personally give it an 8 out of 10. The 8 is just the majority of like the really good gameplay. The story is really interesting if you can actually remember to pay attention. And but the other 2 out of 10 is there are some mishaps that are still in the second division that they should have fixed from the first division. And the story also isn't attention grabbing. So I'd almost give it a 7, but I feel like it's good enough of a game to give it an 8 out of 10. So that's my 2 cents.
And then I gave it a 9 out of 10 because I felt it was a big leap from the first division, and the fact that the gameplay was a whole lot smoother, and a lot of the things that they strive for in Division 2 are a lot bigger than in the original division, with the whole strongholds, with clans, and all these new things that were not even thought about for the first division that are now introduced. And as he said, there are still a couple problems with it, but for my rating, I kind of felt that the bigger things kind of overshadowed those.
Yeah, I'd agree with you a lot on that. But that's all we have for the Division 2. Obviously, we skipped on a lot of information. Like, you can look up the modifiers that are in the different specialists. You can look up what each of the skill variants do, what each of the skills are. Actually, let me list the skills. So there's like Pulse, we have Firefly, we have Drone, we have Seeker Mine, we have Turret, we have a Shield. We also have
Hive.
And then we also have a Chem Launcher.
Oh.
So I'm not going to go into explanation of what those are. Just look them up. Enjoy them. They each have at least 3 variants total. So, yeah. But anyway, make sure you check out our website. And also make sure you check out our like Twitter, our Instagram, our Discord. And then also the music, which will be at the intro and outro of this by DJ Augie, will all be linked in the description. But besides that, game on.